Some of you may have already read this. It's on a site called Awaken the Truth Through Enlightened Media. As you can see her name there in black and white. This is her words. Nobody's putting any words in her mouth. So, by Marianne Williamson, as President Biden reaffirmed his support for Ukraine during his visit. This is February 24th, remember? So we're not quite 2 months. We're about a month and a half, about 6 weeks. So during his visit to the country this week, opinions vary on whether such support is a good idea. For those of us who have spent years opposing the undue influence of the military industrial complex on U.S. foreign policy, the situation poses a peculiar challenge. And I'm going to read this again because this is some hogwash already that she's starting off with. For those of us who have spent years opposing the undue influence of the military industrial complex on U.S. foreign policy, the situation poses a particular challenge because the military industrial complex, U.S. foreign policy, that's one and the same. What do you mean? What does that mean, undue influence? As if it's not the same person, it's not the same entity. The military industrial complex is the foreign policy complex also. It's possible to believe that the undue influence of the U.S. war machine, aided in Washington by the blob of foreign policy experts, is very real. So she's trying to say that there's just influence over our military. The war machine is influencing it. It's not that it is it. And that there are a group of foreign policy experts who are the problem. And at the same time, believe that Russian invasion of Ukraine is a critical venture, a criminal venture that cannot be tolerated by the world. So let me read that again. It's possible to believe that the undue influence of the U.S. war machine is very real, and at the same time believe that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a criminal venture that cannot be tolerated by the world. That is not possible. Because then the question becomes, who are the people that's going to come in to take care of the so-called criminal venture by the Russian invasion? What good guys? Oh, you mean the people the imperialist people? The people, the military industrial complex that's run by the war machine? We're going to call those people in to fix this problem. You see how that doesn't make sense? The United States has perpetuated its own egregious imperialist ventures. They're just ventures. You see what she's doing here? She's making the U.S. is not imperialist. We just do imperialist ventures. You see what she's doing here? This is her taking radical language, taking leftist language, taking socialist, communist language about what they're doing, and then sort of repurposing it. Oh, you use imperialist to talk about this. I'll just take imperialist and I'll apply it over here. Imperialist ventures. Because she is implying that we do good ventures and bad ventures. That's what our military does. Good and bad ventures. She has to do that in order to say that what's our venture in Ukraine is one of the good ventures. Now, she wrote this article before the leaked documents of this of what's happening in Ukraine. Now, there's a lot of suspect. Now, Nick is going to be covering this later. I don't want to spoil it, but the leak is suspect on itself, so I won't go into that. But anyway, a fact which shouldn't be ignored by anyone. It's not an overstatement to say that millions of people around the world, including thousands of U.S. military, have died as a result of our own misadventures. Misadventures. The framing is terrible. But that does not and should not give Vladimir Putin a pass on perpetuating an imperialist war of his own. It doesn't. But what it also doesn't is give the people who are committing and carrying out these imperialist misadventures, it means we also shouldn't be the ones who come in and save them. We also shouldn't be the ones who's funding anything. So both of these can be true. Yes, what Putin is doing is not good. Maybe he wouldn't be doing it if we didn't do what we did in 2014, 2015. We're overthrowing the government, helping to overthrow the democratically elected president there. So no, but what she's doing, she's trying to dress up or put a leftist face, at least language-wise, put a leftist face on this war. There's no spinning it. Clearly, not all wars are the same. You see, and this is what progressives do. This is what the professional managerial class does. They're only anti-war in abstract. A past war. An abstract, hypothetical future war. They're anti-war. It's never a current war. Clearly, not all wars are the same, right? Just as some have pointed out that the war in Ukraine is not a replay of World War II, it's important to remember that it's also not a replay of Iraq or of Afghanistan. Those were bad wars. Those were bad. This is not. Did American foreign policy mistakes contribute to the war in Ukraine? Yes. But does that not mean we are ultimately responsible for Putin's invasion? Nor does it, yes, it means that. Nor does it mean that our larger interest, the interests of people of the Ukraine, or the interests of the rest of the world, or are the best served by our stand out of the conflict. This is terrible. This is terrible. And then we have people on Twitter getting mad at RBN for calling her a neocon. How is she not one after reading this article from her own mouth? Let's continue. The war in Vietnam, a past war, where we can go, hey, that's bad. Afghanistan, that's bad. Iraq, that's bad. All past wars. Where you can be, see, I'm anti-war. The war in Vietnam should not have been fought. The war in Iraq should not have been fought. The war in Afghanistan, with the exception of its beginning phases, with the exception. So Afghanistan shouldn't have been, with an exception, should never have been fought, with the exception of its beginning phases, with the exception of the beginning part of the war. I'm not for war. I believe there is legitimate justification for military support for Ukraine from Western allies, including the United States. Some have mentioned that what they perceive to be a contradiction between my support for the creation of U.S. Department of Peace and my support for military aid in Ukraine. Yes, because it's contradictory. Marianne Williamson. Can't believe people are falling for this nonsense. And she is literally, the thing that's putting her to quicksand the most is her military, is her foreign policy. And she's trying to spin this shit.